One of the hard decisions that we game masters need to make is when to end the gaming session. This seemingly simple decision is actually quite difficult to make. End the session too soon and you might feel like you're letting down your players. End the session too late and you risk missing a good stopping point. Thankfully, there are 4 natural stopping points that will provide satisfying conclusions to most gaming sessions. Before a big event has begun, after a big event has concluded, at a cliffhanger moment, and finally, when our time's up. Let's start by talking about how to end the session just before the start of a big event. Most commonly, this happens right before the party charges into combat. But that's certainly not the only option. It can be before entering a new city, or before an intense negotiation starts. A good suggestion for how to end at this point would be to wait until after all in-play and off-play preparations are done. That way, we can start off the next session with a strong opening that leads into the event itself. Besides giving us a great place to start the next session, this ending point also gives our players something to look forward to. This is one of my favorite stopping points, because I feel that it engages my players well after the session. If my players know that in the next session they'll be entering the Lich's inner sanctum, they might spend the time until that session planning combat tactics, or more likely, thinking up cool one-liners for their victory. The second option is to end the session after a big event has concluded. This could be after a tense combat, or after finishing a night of gambling at the Fat Dragon Inn. This natural stopping point is good because the players are left with a distinct emotion that they can now process. If they've won, they can revel in it. If they lost, they could mourn their characters. And if they had a fun time, they can leave the session feeling content. Of course, not all gaming sessions have a big event that we can use to close the session with. Don't worry about it. There is a reason why there are several potential ending points mentioned in this lesson. The third option is ending with a cliffhanger, which is great because it leaves the player on the edge of their metaphorical seats. For those who do not know, a cliffhanger is a literary term used to describe when a scene or story is finished abruptly at the height of its tension, such as when the hero of the story is literally hanging off a cliff. It leaves the audience, the players, in a state of anticipation. They feel that they must come back for the next session in order to know what happened. In an RPG, this is achieved by stopping a session right after a player or an NPC make a dramatic choice or action, but before you reveal the results or impact of that choice. The players leave the session in anticipation for the next session. Lastly, sometimes we must end the session because time's up. Even if there's no big event, if there's no obvious cliffhanger. If we've all agreed that the session ends at 9, then the session ends at 9. This ending point is often problematic because we can't control it. Wherever we are in the story, that's where it ends. It goes without saying that even when planning for any of the other ending points, we should strive to be as close as possible to the agreed upon ending time. This allows us to maximize our gaming time. But simply ending because it's time will usually feel anticlimactic. How can we make sure that this ending point isn't boring? Well, when you notice that you only have a few extra minutes to the end of the session and not enough time for any serious event, you can stop and insert a different scene. If I want to end on a tense note, I stop and narrate a scene from the villain perspective about what they will do to the PCs if they catch them. If I want to inspire my players, I describe a scene of an NPC they know or saved and how they are well and happy. You could also do a series of questions about the character's emotions or anticipations to end the session. I like to go with, as you are about to continue on your journey. You each think about the road ahead, and you can summarize how you feel in one word. What word is that? And we go in a circle, each player saying how their character feels about the road ahead. There isn't any one right answer to the question, when to stop the session. Why? Because that isn't the right question to ask. The right question is, what is the emotional effect that you want your ending point to support? Ending before a big event will create tension and expectation going forward, which will be great if you have such an event planned out. Ending with a cliffhanger will leave a sense of curiosity, dread, and anticipation. Perfect for dramatic moments. Ending after a big event will let our players savor the outcome of their action. And ending because it's time will help you maximize your game time and let your players know that you're keeping the rules you have all agreed on. One of the big issues I've seen with new game masters is that they're afraid of ending the session too soon. And if there's one piece of advice I want you to take away from this lesson, it is to not be afraid of finishing a bit early. It's better to end on a high note that is full of tension, anticipation, or satisfaction than to run out the clock and finish simply because your time is up. Having said that, sometimes we will want to stall our players a bit. This usually happens if there's a big scene coming up and we want to give it proper time, so we want to start it in the next session. In that case, we might want to use a filler. Fillers are scenes that have no impact on the plot and whose sole purpose is to take up time. This can be a random combat, an encounter with an unrelated NPC, or a red herring just thrown in for fun. I always keep 1 or 2 filler encounters handy. Maybe a goblin hunting party, or a cartographer mapping the surrounding lands. These can be anywhere and require no explanation. Okay, after that last piece of satisfying advice, I feel this is an excellent stopping point for this lesson. Now, take out your pencils and notebook, because in our next lesson, we will be talking about taking notes.